Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. And these words which I command you today shall be in your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. Deuteronomy 6, like we just sang, like we just read, is not just a command. It is a picture of a lifestyle. Where should we be teaching? Everywhere. When should we be doing it? All the time. That is what God says to his people in Deuteronomy 6, and that is something that applies to us today as New Testament disciples. Discipleship is really important. That's what we're going to be talking about tonight. The word disciple we often see or think of as a noun, but here's its definition as a verb. It is the intentional process of helping someone grow in their faith with the ultimate goal of becoming more like Jesus. The word Christian is in the New Testament about, I think it's just 3 times. The word disciple is in there over 250 times. This is not to play semantics or to try to come up with a new way of thinking about something. However, thinking about yourself as a disciple, as a noun, is helpful for seeing yourself discipling as a verb. Thinking of ourselves in that way is going to help us with that intentional process of helping someone grow closer to Jesus. So when we think of ourselves in this way, last week we thought of it in a way or I guess it was last month, we talked about evangelism and roles in evangelism. We talked about these different roles, and Peters and Andrews, teachers and connectors, encouragers. But this week we are going to move away from evangelism a little bit and move more into an idea that I like to call Deuteronomy Discipleship. Underneath this umbrella of discipleship, there I am, okay? Underneath this umbrella of discipleship, evangelism is certainly there, of course. Growing people closer to Jesus, that's, evangelism 101. But with this week, I want us to focus on people who already know God, people who already know Jesus. What do we do with these folks? Is evangelism just a one-time thing? No, we are not just inviting someone to church one time and that's it, nor are we going to baptize someone once and think, okay, like we did it. Or is there a process involved with people who are coming to know Jesus and people who already do know Jesus? Is there a process, like we read in Deuteronomy 6, that is continual? There's a continual process of discipling everywhere. Where? Everywhere. When? All the time. We can disciple like Jesus, just like we read about in Deuteronomy 6 and verse 7. Here's the verse for you that I read earlier, but it's where our focus is going to be tonight when I say Deuteronomy discipleship. This is what I'm talking about. Talking about those words, they shall talk of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. This context, of course, is very famous in Deuteronomy 6. It's famous for a reason. Those verses 4 and 5 are called the Shema, which just means like listen or hear, like we sang. This is talking to parents. God is giving his instruction to parents like, hey, if you want these kids to understand and know God, here's how you're going to have to do it. You can't just be waiting for formal teaching times. You're going to have to be doing it all the time. This is not just, 4 steps to perfect kids as much as we'd like that. No, this is painting a picture. Painting a picture of if you want your kids to know God, you're going to need to be doing it throughout everyday life. That's the message to Israel in Deuteronomy 6, and it's the message to us through the life of Jesus as New Testament disciples. And if you need proof of that, look at Jesus. Look at the Gospels. That's what we're going to do tonight. See how God's standard for discipling, God's standard for raising up, God's standard for knowing him has not changed. We can disciple like Jesus when we sit in our house, when we walk by the way, when we're going somewhere, when we lie down, and when we rise up. We're going to look at those 4 components from Deuteronomy 6 and verse 7 and find them in Jesus. I'm obsessed with this idea right now that so much of what Jesus did is very simple. This outline is pretty simple. What we're going to do is we're going to follow this Old Testament verse we started with,
It became a launching point in my mind to what I know about Jesus. We're going to find that in all sorts of places. It's a simple outline. I like it for that reason. A lot of times I like to stay put in one verse. We did that a couple weeks ago at the V-shaped gospel. Philippians 2, that was it. This will be different than that. We're going to go all over the New Testament. It's not to make your pens run out of ink or to make you feel like I just went through a concordance to find all the examples that I could, but rather to hammer home the idea that Jesus had a Deuteronomy mindset when he discipled, and so should we. This outline is simple, and what Jesus did was simple. Think about some of the most important things Jesus did. Think about the Lord's Supper that we partook of earlier today. It's to remember the life and death and resurrection of Jesus. That's important. And when he established this memorial, he didn't establish a crazy fancy feast with a super hard recipe or a really elaborate way of celebrating. Instead, he used unleavened bread and fruit of the vine to remember his body and blood. Think about prayer. The disciples come to Jesus like, hey, teach us how to pray. We want to talk to the Father. And he explains a very simple process. Hey, if you want to pray, pray like this. And like 5 or 6 verses later, like that's the answer. At the end, we'll talk about how the plan of salvation is so simple as well. But notice how Jesus' ministry is really simple. It's cool to focus on the deity of Jesus and his miracles and think of this as something so far from me to be able to replicate. The way we replicate is different. However, the method is the same, and it's Deuteronomy Discipleship. So much of what Jesus did was very simple. Let me show you how. So in these 4 segments, we're going to start with the first one. When you sit in your house, they're each going to start with like a rapid fire, which to me is fun. Maybe it is to you too. But it's just, again, not to go through the concordance, but rather to show you with these Florida outlines that I didn't just find one example that would kind of fit the point I was trying to make. Instead, this is everywhere in Jesus' ministry, all 4 of these. Let's start with the rapid fire here. In Mark 2, I think this was referenced just this morning. In Peter's house, there's Jesus. It says when he was in the house or was at home. Some people have even gone on to say that this could be Jesus' home, but he probably didn't have his own home. But this is probably Peter's house that he had a vested interest in. Like, this is his home base in Capernaum. And remember what happens? This is when like the man is lowered through the roof. You remember that? And like his friends like have faith and he forgives them, and he uses this as an opportunity, even though there's a hole in his house and the place he's staying, even though there's so many crowds there, Jesus uses this opportunity in his home to heal and then forgive the paralytic. In Luke 5, this is in Levi's house. Levi, Matthew, he holds this feast for all these tax collectors, and the people looking on are like, what is he doing in the house with all of these sinners and tax collectors? And Jesus uses that as a chance to give his little mission statement and say, hey, I came to call sinners to repentance. That's why I'm in the home with all of these tax collectors. He uses that time in the home to grow people closer and call sinners to repentance. Luke 19, this is the one we know real well, Zacchaeus, the wee little man. A wee little man was he. He was in that sycamore tree. And Jesus says, like, hey, I have to come to your house today. That's what I want to do. And he even says later, like, salvation has come to this house with Zacchaeus. And then Luke 19:10, we remember well, Jesus again gives that mission statement. He says, I have come to seek and save that which is lost. How does he do that? He goes to Zacchaeus' house. One more? Yeah, one more. In Matthew 26, in Simon the leper's house, this is a really important lesson for us. We may talk about more in the future, but it's when the woman pours out the oil on Jesus, and they're all like, what are you doing? And he says, hey, she knows what's going on. She is preparing me for my burial. And that happens in Simon the leper's house. Which time do I have? Yeah, this morning, Daniel brought up the idea of like the other person on the road to Emmaus, and Dan explained how that wasn't Simon Peter. We didn't know who it was. Some people suggested it was like a different Simon. So this afternoon, I was like, could it have been Simon the leper? No, it couldn't have. But I thought it would have been really interesting to put those 2 points together. But it's not. This is just another Simon who is hospitable. And he hosts all these people in his home, and Jesus uses that again to draw people closer to him. But the one I want us to focus on, now that I've gone on my rapid fire examples, is probably one we know really well. Go to Luke 10 with me. Luke 10 is Mary and Martha. Mary and Martha, here Jesus teaches discipleship over distraction. Jesus discipled when he was in people's houses. That's not surprising to us, nor is this story of Mary and Martha new to us. But thinking about specific opportunities in the house, don't miss the chance to disciple by being distracted. Pick up with me in verse 38. Now it happened as they went, they entered a certain village, and a certain woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. And she had a sister called Mary, who also sat at Jesus' feet and heard his word. But Martha was distracted with much serving, and she approached him and said, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Therefore tell her to help me." And Jesus answered and said to her, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and troubled about many things, but one thing is needed, and Mary has chosen that good part, which will not be taken from her." Okay, so remember back to Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy 6, the idea is this. Hey, parents, raising up your kids, don't miss your chance to tell them about the Lord when you're in your house or walking by the way. Use those everyday moments to remind your kids about the Lord. And here in Luke 10 with Mary and Martha, the idea is the same. He says, hey, like Martha, you're troubled and distracted about the wrong things. You've missed the better part by being distracted. A simple story, a simple application, but it jumps off the pages to me when I think about how this looks today. So the first one is this. When someone invites you to their home, say yes. We've been doing a lot of that recently because there's so many hospitable folks here, and that's been really fun for us. We've had a really good time just saying yes to opportunities to go to people's homes. Further than that, when you can, invite people into your own home. When you are a guest, or when you have guests, or when it is just you and your family, don't let distractions take away from discipleship. There's a good time for watching the baseball game. There's a good time for scrolling or just heating up leftovers and taking a brain break. But tonight, don't let the first thing you do be to just scroll and forget about what happened the hour previously. Use those times in the kitchen. Use those times in the home with your family, with guests, to talk about spiritual things. This opportunity to disciple in the home should be exciting to us. I'll tell you why. Pew Research study did a study that concluded mothers or the main meal prepper in the family spends an average of 68 minutes a day in the kitchen. That's probably low, to be real. Another Pew Research study showed that Americans over the age of 60 are spending over 4 hours a day on leisurely screen time. So maybe the concept of discipling, bringing someone closer to Jesus, is daunting. I think that's hard. When am I going to do that? How am I going to do that? That sounds complicated. Okay, well, look at Jesus. He takes the complications out of it, makes it simple. You can say, that sounds time-consuming. I don't know if I have time for that. Well, look at the time we have in our home. Discipleship is not an on-off switch that we go from being on the clock to off the clock. Discipleship is who we are. And if we have those times in the kitchen, those times on our phone that maybe are being wasted, we can use some of that time to disciple. Use that time in the kitchen tonight as you're heating up leftovers with your spouse, or making dinner tonight, or even just getting takeout on the way home, to talk with your family and say, what'd you think of the sermon? What was that guy talking about? Or, I really liked it. And to that person I say thank you. But maybe you can talk about these things and launch into spiritual discussions. Don't let these times be wasted, because if we keep going to work and then coming home, heating up leftovers, cleaning up after ourselves, going to bed and going to work again, you're going to say, there's no time. When am I possibly supposed to grow someone closer to God? If we're just going through those everyday motions, which are needed, we need to do those things. We need to eat. We need to rest. Use those times for discipleship. One more shout out I want to give about this. You don't have to have like a perfect or huge house to make all this happen. Shout out Randy and Terry last week, kind of organized this event at the park. I think Randy has told me that maybe their house wouldn't be great for holding like 25 people in it. But that doesn't mean they can't grow people closer to God. It doesn't mean that they can't initiate spiritual and fellowship activities. They can say, okay, I can spearhead this and make an event happen, and at that event all sorts of good fellowship, spiritual conversation, and just camaraderie happened. There's always going to be an excuse. If you're talking about how busy you are at work, if you're waiting to be unbusy at work, you're probably never going to do these things. If you're waiting till your house gets bigger, that might not ever happen either. Use the opportunities you now, break down the barriers, use a restaurant, use a park, use your home, but don't let the opportunity to disciple breeze by you by being distracted. Jesus teaches discipleship over distraction. Okay, let's talk about when you walk by the way. So much of Jesus' ministry, like if you're thinking in the Gospels, we talked about this today too, so much of it happened while he was going somewhere. Here's some rapid-fire examples. In Matthew 12, Jesus and his disciples are walking through the grain fields, and remember, there's people like saying, hey, like you shouldn't be, plucking those grain fields, it's the Sabbath, and then Jesus talks about the showbread and David, and it's a full-on teaching opportunity. Like, this is pretty in-depth. Like, he's referencing Scripture, he's referencing David, he's using an object lesson of the grain fields to make a major teaching opportunity. It's not a formal time, he didn't even have a pulpit. He's just walking through the grain fields using an object lesson. And then Mark 8 is what we talked about this morning on the road to Caesarea Philippi. He asks a question. They're just on their way somewhere, and he says, hey, who do people say that I am? And of course, the next part is what we remember. We remember, he says this, and we went through the whole progression in class. He said this and this, and it's so cool for all these reasons. And Jesus is like, get behind me, Satan. And you're like, where did that happen? It happened on the way somewhere. It happened while he was going somewhere. And then Matthew 20, verse 17, while they're going up to Jerusalem, this is a lot is building up to what's going to happen in Jerusalem. They're on their way somewhere, and he uses that as a chance to explain what's going to happen. For families with kids, or for anyone who might be taking a visitor with them to church, or maybe to someone who hasn't been to church in a long time, you can kind of explain what's going to happen. Use that as an opportunity in the car on the way to say, hey, these things are going to happen. Don't be surprised by them. Use that opportunity on the way there. But of course, my favorite is going to be the road to Emmaus. Turn to Luke 24. Luke 24 is the road to Emmaus. We talked about this morning too, a little bit after this. But look at the road to Emmaus with me. Look in verse 13. As I'm just going to summarize for us, where there's the two of them. The one of them is named as Cleopas. They're walking down on the road to Emmaus. Jesus joins them. He's like, what are y'all talking about? And they're like, are you the only one who doesn't know what's been going on? Have you been in a cave? And he's like, well, kind of. Okay, that doesn't happen. But he says, what things? What's been going on? These two people, they're restrained from understanding who this person is. And Jesus just gets a chance to hear from them. They're saying, we were hoping that this Jesus of Nazareth was the guy. And the women came to the tomb today, and they didn't find him. And then Jesus takes over and he says, O foolish ones and slow of heart, verse 25, to believe in all that the prophets have spoken. Ought not the Christ to have suffered those things and to enter into his glory? And beginning at Moses and all the prophets, he expounded to them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself. Okay, if there's one lesson, one verse that you would like expounded on the whole Bible, wouldn't that be it? Jesus took this time while he was walking somewhere to make the ultimate reveal of Scripture, right? Like Jesus in the Old Testament is concealed and then revealed in the New Testament, and that's where he does it. This is the first explicit reveal, and what is he doing? He's walking on the way to Emmaus. You would expect, just like the Lord's Supper, just like with prayer, that these would happen in spectacular, huge ways. You would expect Jesus, for this ultimate reveal to happen, that there'd be a super secret meeting, like a conclave, if you will, and all these important people would come in, and he'd explain it in this keynote presentation way, and then it'd be official. But no, Jesus, God himself, who came to earth, died and rose from the dead, reveals this in Scripture, just walking somewhere. Just on the road to Emmaus, he makes the most important reveal in human history. So if Jesus uses his time while he's just going somewhere to teach, to disciple, these two other folks who really are Deuteronomy disciples, they're doing what we're talking about here. They're walking by the way, and they're trying to tell someone else about the spiritual things they're encountering. But then Jesus, as the ultimate Deuteronomy disciple, makes the ultimate reveal. If he's doing that while he's walking to Emmaus, what are we doing with our time while we're on our way places? The reveal that Jesus made is the coolest in Scripture. We don't have that reveal to make. We're not Jesus. But to some people, we can make a very similar reveal. To those who do not know Jesus like we do, we can tell them about this. It doesn't mean we have to come and bring people to the formal teaching segments. It doesn't mean that we have to do it in a very formal way at all. We can reveal Jesus to other people in very casual ways, just while we're walking by the way. The way that we travel today is usually not in walking places. That's how Jesus did it. We do it differently. Another stat for you, according to the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety's 2022 American Driving Survey, U.S. drivers reported spending approximately 6 hours a week, totaling about 317 hours per year behind the wheel. I know for some of us here, that's probably low again. Or maybe on ferries, you spend even more time commuting, even more time going somewhere. Commutes or any travel time can just be completely lost time. Or it can be spent learning or teaching or praying or bringing someone else in. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that every free moment you have of your day needs to be committed to this. That's not what I'm saying at all. We're not having an on and off switch. It should be on all the time. There's a time to listen to music and a time to watch the Dodgers game. That's what we were doing with the Axmans today. It was really fun. But at the same time, we can be discipling. We can use maybe our way out to work to do something spiritual. We can do something on the way back for ourselves or vice versa, but don't let it be lost time. Because that's a lot of time that you spend. And if you get home after your long day at work and after your 2-hour commute, you're going to think, I don't have time for discipling. I don't have time to reach out to that member. I don't have time to send a text. I'm tired. So just real practical things. One, for our own learning. Okay, we're trying to disciple ourselves too. For our own learning, I do a lot of Bible reading with audio. I really like that. For some people, it doesn't work. For me, it really does. When I'm driving, especially in Florida, it's getting better here because people are nicer. But on the road, I can get really upset. It's harder to get upset if you're listening to the Word of God while you're driving. So turn that on if that's hard for you. If you're getting frustrated, if you're losing your patience, listen to the Bible. Listen to a sermon. If I can plug this other part of discipleship, we're trying to reach out to other people. We're trying to get to know each other better in more spiritual ways. And so that's where this whole idea for this podcast comes from. Consider one another. It's a podcast focused on each other. And use that as a chance to listen to a podcast about someone, okay? This last one was just the first one about me. It won't be about me going forward. This Friday, you'll see one drop that the title is just Jonathan Keene. And then, hey, I want to know more about Jonathan. And like this last Sunday, I kind of missed him. He was talking to someone else. Use that as a chance. Listen to it on your ferry ride back or on your drive home or while you're doing the dishes. And use that as a chance to get to know someone. Don't let it stop there, though. Use your next commute to give a phone call to someone. And be like, hey, I didn't see you at church on Sunday. I'm just checking in. We're not trying to police people's church attendance. We're not trying to, be in charge of anyone. We're trying to care for each other. We're trying to disciple and bring them closer to Jesus. If someone's not there and we don't notice, that probably seems like we don't care very much. Use these car rides as a chance to give someone a phone call. Use it as a chance to send an audio message or use a dictation with Siri to send a text. But know that there's a lot of time left on the table that we could be using to bring other people in. Use your time on the road to pray is one last that I would add. Prayer is a difficult topic, but I do think it's something that can happen while you're on the road. Don't close your eyes, but to talk to God while you're driving somewhere can help, and you can pray for other people. It's especially helpful for me. It's easy to end my days with my prayers being really focused on me and what my day holds the next day, but sometimes when you're overwhelmed with your day, make a really, really specific effort to pray for other people while you're on the road. There's a time to pray for yourself too. You can do that. But pray for other people while you're going somewhere. Pray for someone who there's just a laundry list of prayer requests. That's probably not going to change. Keep praying for people. Keep reaching out to people. Keep discipling. You can do it on the road. Okay, we're halfway home. We got 2 more of these that kind of intertwine. This is when you lie down or when you rest. Jesus, God himself is really a big fan of rest. From the beginning, right? Like there's that 7th day that God rested. God's a big fan of rest. It's built into the calendar. Jesus rested too. So if we view rest as the enemy of discipleship and evangelism, rest is either going to feel like a sin or we're really not going to like discipleship. This is the idea here is not that you're not allowed to rest anymore. No, the idea is rest, but disciple in your rest. Here's how Jesus did it. In Mark 1:29, this is the one we talked about this morning. Again, he leaves the synagogue to rest because they're tired. His ministry's in full swing. They're exhausted. But then Peter's mother-in-law lays sick with a fever, and he's still going to put that person first. He's tired. He's not saying, I'm off the clock right now. He's saying, okay, we went here to rest, but we can still heal. Put someone else first. In Mark 4, this is, the calming of the sea. He's asleep at the stern during the storm. Like, my man is tired. He's asleep in a storm. Like, you've got to be knocked out, tired to sleep during a storm. But even then, he uses that as a chance when they wake him up, like, do you not care? And he implicitly shows, yes, I care. And he teaches them a lesson while also stilling the storm, having just woken up from a nap. He's a big fan of rest, but rest is not a break from discipleship. In Mark 6, he tells his disciples to rest a while, but then he is moved with compassion for the crowd. So he's not saying you're not allowed to rest, and then he sees the crowds who are hungry and he takes care of them too. Jesus rested, but he remained a disciple while he rested. Look at John 13. This is the upper room discourse, as it is often referred to. There's so much to unpack here. Again, we're just kind of zooming in and zooming out of these stories. But this is a cool one to me, because we know John 13, the upper room discourse, is a super important time. Jesus has kind of had his last time in front of like the public before the crucifixion will happen, and now is like his last time in private with his disciples to rest. And here is where he mentions that there's going to be someone who betrays him, and of course the disciples do what? They're like, who's it going to be? Look at verse 23. There was leaning on Jesus' bosom one of his disciples whom he loved. Simon Peter, therefore, motioned to him to ask who it was of whom he spoke. He's asking, who's going to betray you? Then, leaning back on Jesus' breast, he said to him, Lord, who is it? Jesus answered, it is he to whom I shall give a piece of bread and have dipped it. And we know what happens from there with Judas. But if there was ever a time, throughout this ministry, these guys have been asking Jesus question after question. And then if there's ever time for Jesus to lose his patience, to be like, could you guys stop for half a second? Like, could you let me rest? Like, I'm about to be crucified. I'm about to be betrayed. I'm about to die for the sins of the world. Would you stop worrying about yourselves for one moment? But instead, even though they're reclined at the table, even though they're resting, like he's like leaning on him. Like this is a close, intimate, tired moment. Even then, as Jesus is about to be betrayed, even while he's tired, even while he's resting, he's patient. He fields their question and asks and talks with them and is not upset. He's not angry. He answers their question and is patient. So Jesus encourages rest, but it is not a break from discipleship. So how it looks today is, yes, give yourself rest. Definitely give yourself rest. He's a big fan of that. But don't let that be an off switch to discipleship. I'll tell you how it works for me. We talked about patience as a theme for teaching last time, and so it's something as a teacher I'm trying to really focus on for myself. Humbly, when I'm in settings like this, in August when I was teaching class, or even when I'm at the building here, I really like fielding questions. Like, I like it. Someone will just ask me a random question, like I'm with it, or someone will ask, for a prayer request or something for me to do for them, and I'm like excited about it, because I'm kind of like ready for it here. But then other times, when I feel like I'm not exactly ready for it, my patience kind of goes down. I'll give you an example. All my examples happen at the Panera Bread for some reason. But at the Panera Bread, on a Tuesday in Florida, I had a headache, and my wife was like, let's just go get you a bread bowl of soup. And I was like, great idea. I love bread bowls of soup. And they take away headaches. And I said, okay, let's go there. We'll get there an hour early before our Tuesday night study, and I'll just rest for a second, and then we'll study, and it'll be good. Instead, someone else had the same idea, that another member of the study would come to the Panera Bread an hour early and eat dinner. And she was like, hey, Will. And I was like, my first instinct, was to be like, study's at 7. Don't talk to me right now. Like, it's not time yet. Of course, that'd be a terrible look. It would be exact opposite of discipleship. It'd be the exact opposite of evangelism, because evangelism is not just structured, formal meetup studies, structured, formal sermons. Evangelism and discipleship happens in the everyday moments. While you have a headache, while you're hungry, right before dinner, right before the study, that's when someone's going to come up to you, and she said, hey, this is my friend who wanted to come to the study, and so then I have to meet this person, and we're excited about it, and we have dinner with this person, and then we kind of really got a relationship going there and studied with that person for months. Would have been really easy to be off the clock and say, no, thanks, it's not time. But instead, use that patience, not just during formal teaching times, not just when you're with the brethren in the church building, but all the time. Use it even while you're tired. That's really, really important. I shout these people out a lot, but the young parents in our congregation are really an encouragement to me. These Thursday nights we'll get together to pray, just to pray and talk about life and talk about what's going on. And it's been really encouraging to me to see, these young men leading prayers while holding a baby. And there's all the excuses in the world of why they can't be at the prayer group, all the excuses in the world of why, this is not a priority for them. They've got someone to take care of. So Jesus doesn't say, he doesn't say you're not allowed to be tired. He says you can be tired. These people are tired, but they remain disciples. They keep praying. They keep being with one another. They keep on even though they're tired. That's what Jesus did, and that's what we need to do. Okay, one more. When you rise up. The fourth aspect of Deuteronomy 6 and verse 7 may seem like it should come first, like this seems like the beginning of it. But instead, I really think the idea is, hey, when you've done these three things, wake up the next morning, do it again. Do it one more time, keep going. And specifically, do it the first thing when you rise up. Jesus encouraged rest, but he certainly woke up early. Luke 6, verse 13, after he'd been praying all night, when it was day, he called his disciples. That's a really important part of his ministry. It seems like it's happening right as the day gets going. John 8:2, there's all sorts of controversy and things to talk about with John 8, but it's in a lot of manuscripts that say early in the morning, Jesus goes to the temple to teach. And that's where, the scene happens where there's the woman caught in adultery. But Jesus, the whole scene starts with going to the temple early. That's who Jesus was. He started these things early. I've been feeling pretty good about all these so far. This one might be a little bit of a stretch. Matthew 28, we know what that is. When the first day of the week began to dawn, Mary is there. She's there. I kind of think of it as she's a disciple of Jesus. Throughout Jesus' ministry, he's waking up early, making these things happen. So when she goes on the first day of the week to see the tomb of Jesus, to take care of it, she goes there early. But then, of course, Jesus, being the ultimate Deuteronomy disciple, he's gone early in the morning, and he's already risen. We've got Deuteronomy disciples there waking up early, putting these first things first. But long before the sun is when Jesus did a lot of his work. We'll look at Mark 1 one more time. We referenced this earlier, but read with me just 5-6 more verses of Mark 1. This is long before the sun comes up. Jesus' ministry had begun. It's in full swing. He's healing with the entire city at the door until late at night. But then we read this, what we were looking at before, where Simon's wife, mother lay sick with a fever, and they told him about her at once. Verse 31, he came and took her by the hand, lifted her up. Immediately the fever left her, and she served them. Then at evening, when the sun had set, they brought to him all who were sick and those who were demon-possessed. And the whole city was gathered together at the door. Then he healed many who were sick with various diseases and cast out many demons. And he did not allow the demons to speak because they knew him. Verse 35, now in the morning, having risen a long while before the daylight, he went out and departed to a solitary place, and there he prayed. So Jesus, just in those 5 verses leading up to verse 35, he's doing a lot. He's healing Peter's mother-in-law. He's healing the sick. So many people are bringing sick people to him. He's overwhelmed. He's exhausted. They said this is at evening. So he is up late and then up early. And what does he do when it's early? He seeks out a place to pray. So for me, it's easy to think about time that we spend here, think about time that we spent doing spiritual things, and think, I don't really need to wake up early to pray. I'm pretty spiritual. But if it's Jesus himself who needed to seek out specific time to pray, to get closer to the Father, to commune with him, then we certainly need to be doing that too. If Jesus woke up early to pray, then so should we. And that's how it looks today. I know we talked about the importance of rest, but let's realize how these last 2 points really work together. Jesus is showing here that some rest is better than sleep. For me and for you, think about what recharges you. Okay, think about what recharges you. Often when that Panera story, when I'm feeling tired, sometimes it's a snack. I need food now. A lot of times it's a laugh. I'll go craving for some funny show, and then I'll take a nap, and now I'm recharged. Okay, everyone has a thing that recharges them. And again, Jesus is not saying that's a bad thing. He's saying that's a good thing. Don't let it be a break. But further, think about something else that could recharge you. Does discipleship feel like work all the time? Does praying to God feel like work? Does reading scriptures feel like work? There's a time to study and work hard and really dig into scripture, but there's another time where this should be the thing that recharges us. If you're waiting until you feel completely energized to reach out to someone, you're probably never going to host someone over for dinner. If you're waiting until you feel completely rested to wake up early and spend 5 minutes in prayer, you're probably never going to spend those 5 minutes in prayer. If you keep waiting to be filled, to go to God, then you're probably never going to be filled. But instead, like Jesus, when you feel empty, go to God and He will fill your tank. That's what Jesus does. That's what we want to do as well. I found this stat, one more stat for you. Science Daily in 2025, Americans reported that 55% hit the snooze button at least once. And the average was like 11 minutes worth of snooze. Now, I love the snooze button. Terrible idea, but I love it. And it's something that can just start your day 9 minutes later. It's tempting, right? But what if we got those 9 minutes back? What if we got 5 minutes back? You could see this and think it's a daunting task, but my encouragement to you real practically is tomorrow wake up 5 minutes earlier. Okay? If your alarm is usually at 6:30, wake up at 6:25 and use those 5 minutes for something. Not only are those 5 minutes going to be productive, going to be drawing you closer to God, but it's going to shape the rest of your 12-hour day. If you're like me, sometimes you're tempted to wake up at like the very last second, I don't know why we do that. You wait at the very last second, as long as everything goes perfectly right, we'll get where we need to just barely on time, and then your whole day is just 2 minutes behind, and it's terrible. Wake up 5 minutes earlier and read like a verse. Read a chapter. Wake up 5 minutes earlier and make a prayer list. Wake up 5 minutes earlier and write a card. I love this idea of what we do with our fractional time. For my generation, and for probably all Americans, what we do with our fractional time is like we scroll, or like we play a game, or we do something that is not productive because like I'm waiting on my wife, she says give me 2 minutes, I say yeah right, and then like I scroll for a little bit, and then like that's what I use my fractional time for. But if you have fractional time, 5 minutes in the morning, 3 minutes before you leave the door, have a card station ready, just right at your dining room table. The wife says 5 minutes, but like okay, like I'm gonna write a card to Russell and Clark. That'll take you about 3 minutes. But if you're waiting until you have nothing to do to write a card to Russell and Clark, you probably never will. But if you wake up 5 minutes sooner, if you use fractional time on your way out the door, even while you're tired, those fractional times, those 5 minutes early are going to turn into good habits that change the rest of your day. And all of a sudden, you're seeking God in prayer naturally on the way to work too, and you're reaching out to people naturally because you just wrote a card to somebody else, and now this Deuteronomy discipleship doesn't feel like work, it feels like rest. And isn't that what Jesus showed us by living a life close to the Father? That no matter what we're doing, if we are drawing ourselves closer to God, other people will be drawn in, and even though we're tired, even though we might be missing something in life, if we have Him, we have it all. And that is contagious. What is the conclusion of all this? These four ideas here. We love our formal teaching times, right? Like, this has been great. But more than just our formal teaching times, more than just our sermons, think about your daily life. Think about what you're going to do when you spend time in the house. Don't wait for the sermon or the meetup study or a specific formal meeting time to draw yourself closer to God. Do it in the house. Disciple over distraction. When you're going somewhere, when you're resting, it's not a break from discipleship. And when you start your day, start it by doing something that's going to draw you and others closer to God. That's Deuteronomy discipleship. And I said I'd have to bring this all the way home by talking about Jesus and how simple his ministry was. I have to say in closing that we find a really similar simplicity in the plan of salvation. If you think about how someone comes to know Jesus, how someone is saved from the remission of their sins, you'd think that happened in a really fancy, crazy way. But it's not. It happens through water baptism. It happens through faith in Jesus. For a lot of us here, we've done that. If you haven't, or if you've strayed from the path at all, know that all these disciples here have you in mind, right? We want to disciple each other. If someone's off the path, if someone needs brought on the path, we're here for you. I'm here for you specifically. Find me in the front during the song. Find me in the back after services if you want to talk about anything. For everyone here, don't just let this invitation go to someone else. Think about it for yourself. What am I going to change this week to draw myself and others closer to Jesus? How am I going to be a Deuteronomy disciple? That's the lesson. Let's stand and sing our